Hello. Aloha kako. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Joint Committees on Education and Higher Education and Technology. Today's date is March the 15th. The time is 2:00 p.m. and we are in conference room 309. And for the first time, we have some of our community members joining us back in person. So welcome to you all. It feels good to get back to some sense of normalcy. And we have one bill on our joint agenda today. First one and only one, SB 2142 SD1 relating to computer science. First up on our list, we have the Board of Education providing comments. We have Superintendent Hayashi providing comments.
Good afternoon, Chairs Woodson Takayama, Vice Chairs Capella and Clark, and members of the committee. I'm Teru Shijima, Interim Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Curriculum Instructional Design, and the department stands on its written testimony providing comments on this measure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here in person. Next, we have the Hawaii State Public Charter School Commission providing testimony in support.
Good afternoon. Oh,
yes.
Sorry, good afternoon, Chair Woodson, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Capella, and Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee. The commission stands on its testimony in strong support of SB 2142. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Next, we have the University of Hawaii providing testimony in support. Next, we have Budget and Finance providing comments. Code.org in support. Hawaii Kids Can in support. HSTA providing testimony in support. Hawaii Broadband Hui providing testimony in support. And we have about 4 individuals all providing testimony support. Is there anyone wishing to testify on SB 2142 SD1? Okay, seeing none, members, are there any questions? A quick question for Department of Education.
Either one, I guess.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here. So in your testimony, you mentioned that there is not a equivalency with the computer science curricula and other subject matters that are articulated in the proposal. Can you please expound upon that statement?
It's rather than a equivalency, it's a different subject area. So it would be a different option.
I see. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
Members, any other questions? Seeing none, quick recess for DM.
Are we still able to give testimony? I'm so sorry.
Yes, because we didn't go into the break-in, so please go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, the SB 2142 Dream Team is in the house. It's in the house. Kidding around because this mom and computer science teacher is all in it for the kids. I could tell you about our interactive chant, coded dances, command moves, and wonderful fun-free code.org curriculum. Yet today, I would really love to tell you about my son. Jackson from an early age showed plenty creativity, just like so many of our keiki at home. He would tinker around with Legos and build all kinds of intricate designs. He learned coding and robotics in elementary, yet in middle school, there was nothing. At Kalani, he gets to learn from one of Hawaii's best computer science teachers. He enjoys class, but is not confident to continue. Let's close those huge ladder gaps by inspiring more people to learn computer science. Now is the time. Let's go, Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you. That was so worth it. Okay, members, any questions?
Can I just acknowledge that last testifier?
Major Leader, go ahead.
So Ms. Celeste Endo is a fantastic teacher at Queen Kahumanu School. I know how much she's done at in encouraging young girls and boys to learn about coding and all kinds of things, computer science. So Ms. Endo, thank you for joining us here on your spring break to advocate
So-
for this important bill.
You're so
Thank you.
welcome. Your daughter's on our board back there.
So I might have a conflict of interest.
No
Chair.
conflict, Majority Leader. Okay, thank you. Quick recess. Thank you, members, for reconvening for decision making on one bill, SB 2142 SD1, Computer Science DOE and University of Hawaii. Members, I'm recommending that we accept BOE, DOE's, HSTA's, and Hawaii Kids Can suggestion to add computer science to the list of programs of study to earn credits as opposed to supplanting existing subject matters. We hope that that takes care of everyone's concerns about this moving forward. We also feel this is a very important bill. We also would like to push back the implementation date to school year 23-24. And that's also per the recommendation of the Department of Education and the Board of Education. Now, we're going to clarify that the scholarship program is specific to students earning a degree in teaching, and they also want to take computer science classes. And we also want to prioritize those students that come from underserved communities. It's per University of Hawaii's inquiry in the testimony. Also accepting University of Hawaii's recommendation to state that the University of Hawaii shall submit all pathway programs to the Hawaii Teacher Standards Board. That's just to make sure that we're in alignment through that entire curriculum per the licensure approval process. Besides that, defecting the effective date to July 1st, 2051. Questions, comments, concerns, members? Vice Chair, for the vote, please.
Voting on SB 2142 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bellotti?
Aye.
Representative Clark?
Aye.
Representative Ganadin?
Aye.
Representative Gates?
Aye.
Representative Hashimoto?
Aye.
Representative Ono? Excuse. Representative Quinlan? Excuse. Representative Takayama?
Aye.
Representative Yamane?
Aye.
Representative Okimoto?
Aye.
Representative Casales?
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members.
Same recommendation for the Committee on Higher Education. Vice Chair, would you take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Now voting on Bill number SB 2142 SD1. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bellotti?
Aye.
Representative Casales?
Aye.
Representative Ganadin?
Aye.
Representative Gates?
Aye.
Representative Hashimoto?
Aye.
Representative Capella?
Aye.
Representative Ono? Excused. Representative Quinlan? Excused. Representative Woodson?
Aye.
Representative Yamane?
Aye.
Representative Okimoto?
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, quick recess. Okay, thank you, members. Continuing our hearing on education. Next up, we have SB 2822 SD1 relating to asthma and the Department of Education. First up, we have DOE providing comments.
Good afternoon. Yvonne Hummel, Department of Education. We stand on our written testimony offering comments. Thank you.
For being here. Next, we have Department of Health providing comments. We have the Disability and Communications Access Board providing testimony and support. American Lung Association in Hawaii providing testimony and support.
Aloha Chair, Vice
Yes.
Chair and Committee, I'm Angela Petersons, representing the American Lung Association in Hawaii. In support of the bill, we stand on our written testimony. Mahalo.
Thank you for being with us. Next, we have Aloha Care providing testimony and support. The Hawaii Medical Association providing testimony and support. Hawaii Primary Care Association providing testimony and support. Hawaii Public Health Association providing testimony and support. Hawaii Public Health Institute providing testimony and support. And we have two individuals both providing testimony and support. Is there anyone here wishing to provide testimony for this bill? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? A quick question for the American Lung Association, if they're still here.
Yes, aloha.
Hi, so thank you for being here again. So the Department of Education currently, they have the flexibility to go ahead and offer this type of instruction if they want to do that. Of course, there's a process. And so why do you believe that we should incorporate it into statute?
Let's see, yes, I apologize. I am speaking on behalf of the advocacy director in Hawaii, so I do not have a formal answer, but we believe that providing asthma education availability to all schools and in a broader sense with our asthma programs would be beneficial to families and keiki.
Okay. And so what programs should we include and which programs should we not include? Because there's an argument to be made that we should also be teaching kids CPR. There's a whole array of subject matters that we should or could be teaching our kids. It's not meant to be a leading question, but do you think that that should be left up to the principals or the teachers or the board?
We believe that, when as a parent also of children, when our kids can't breathe, nothing else matters. So we believe that having wider access to all of these programs are beneficial and should be provided access at the state level rather than each individual school.
Thank you so much for being here. Members, any other questions? All right, seeing none, moving on to the next bill, we have SB 2189 regarding the Board of Education and chairperson position. First up, we have BOE providing comments. And we have individual testimony from two people, both providing testimony in support. Anyone wishing to provide testimony on SB 2189? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, moving on to the next bill, SB 2824 SD1 regarding the Board of Education and Qualifications. First up on our testifiers list, we have the BOE providing comments. Next, we have Hawaii Kids Can providing testimony and support via Zoom.
Aloha, Chair Woodson, Vice Chair Capella, and members of the committee. Hawaii Kids Can strongly supports SB 2824 SD1. We stand on our written testimony and wanted to make the following note. We believe the Senate confirmation process is sufficiently rigorous to assess the specific qualifications of nominees and whether they meet the guidance proposed by this bill. The confirmation process is also an opportunity for legislators to review the overall composition of the board and determine if nominees will enable the board to reach the diversity intended by this bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Being here, Mr. Miyashiro. And we also have testimony from two individuals writing testimony in support. Anyone else wishing to provide testimony on this bill? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? Seeing none, moving on to the next bill, SB 2180 SD1. BOE nominations and confirmations. First up, we only have one testimony. It's in opposition. However, I think it's supposed to be, if you read the testimony, in support, but I'll let the members decide that. That's all I have on my testifiers list. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony on SB 2180 SD1? See none. See there's no testifiers here. We'll move on to the next bill. SB 3090 SD1 regarding federal reimbursements. First up, we have is the Department of Education, CFO Hallett, or Superintendent Hayashi. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairs Woodson and Takayama, Vice Chairs Capella and Clark, members of the committee. Keith Hayashi, Department of Education. We stand on our written testimony in support. This is an admin bill that you have previously heard and passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here, Superintendent. That's all I have on my testifiers list. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? I have a quick question for CFO Hallett. And I know that we considered this proposal before, but if you can please explain what the importance of this bill is and what it does.
So this is really a transparency bill. This measure will allow the department to better account for revenues that we receive from indirect costs assessments that we make against our federal grants, our federal formula grants, our Title I, Title II, for example. It'll just allow us to deposit that into a revolving fund, and it'll then be subject to all the reporting requirements that come along with that.
Okay. And why is that important?
Because currently we have a revenue stream and we don't have a means to account for it. We don't have a fund. It's not authorized. We can only deposit money into funds as they're authorized by statute. And so we are lacking that authorization. So we have a very hard time keeping track of these funds, these indirect cost assessment funds.
Okay.
So this will really help us better account for it, and it'll also have the added benefit of being very transparent.
Okay, thank you, sir. Members, any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Majority Leader.
So when you say it's going to be transparent, do you have an aggregate amount of the money that's going to be now disclosed to us?
So each year, the federal government, we negotiate a rate that we can charge, assess against indirect cost charges against, and then there's certain allowable expenses that we can assess that against. So it varies between $2 to $3 million a year, approximately. And for transparency purposes, we have those Chapter 3747, those annual non-general fund reports that you'd be able to see the revenues coming in and the planned expenditures out over a 6-year basis.
And then $2 to $3 million is for one grant or all grants? Or
That's cumulative for all formula grants.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing that, moving on to the next bill, SB 3091 SD2 regarding DOE pathways and commercial enterprise. We have DOE providing testimony and support.
Keith Hayashi, Department of Education. Good afternoon. We stand on our written testimony in support.
Thank you for being here, sir. We have individual testimony also in support. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony? See none, members, are there any questions? A quick question for DOE. Thank you again for being here. I guess pre-COVID, we had opportunities to visit some of the campuses, and there's some pretty amazing instruction happening in the space. I think we enjoy and we like how the instruction is not only interdisciplinary. Need some more coffee. Interdisciplinary. Help me out, Vice Chair. Say that. Thank you. Interdisciplinary in its scope, but it also provides real life application. Can you share some examples that you know of within the department as to where these programs are really excelling and exceeding in helping our kids?
Yes, I think we have several programs across our state, and ones that come to mind right away are we know that actually superintendent should be sharing this probably, but we have several at Waipahu High School that have been in existence over the years, from students studying culinary to different types of media, to our Waianae Coast, who they've been engaged in their media programs. They're doing aquaponics, and there's I think we visited Waikea School recently, and they have different pathways for their students to explore these different opportunities as well.
Thank you for sharing. Superintendent, do you want to share? I think it's important. I mean, the Department of Education oftentimes gets beat up, but you guys are not doing bad. And this is one of those examples to where I think Hawaii really excels, not only across our communities, but across the country with respect to some of these programs. So if you can just offer some words about some of the programs that you know across the state, or one or two.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through the efforts of many of the high schools, we are making a conscious effort to connect what we're learning in school and high schools to workforce readiness, and to support our students through high school to either higher education or into the workforce. And so the experiences that we like to provide for our students are those that are relevant and provide students the opportunities to really get a sense of what it's like after they graduate from high school and in pursuing their dreams and what they're passionate about. As Assistant Superintendent Ushijima has shared, we visited, for example, Waianae High School and what they're doing with their aquaculture program there. And the ability for them to engage their students in aquaculture is definitely remarkable. We've gone to Kohala High School on Hawaii Island in Hawaii County. And Kohala High School students, again, engage in aquaculture and aquaponics. They're growing different kinds of plants, raising animals, rabbits, and so forth, and looking really at how to connect their experiences to real world criminology. We've visited schools on Kauai, Waimea High School. Principal Ongwai does a remarkable job there also, together with her staff, on engaging students in aquaponics and in natural resources, in the natural resources pathway. Pro City High School with their health academy, really doing an outstanding job. We've seen students working on research with blood, and in partnering with Hawaii Pacific Health and other agencies. We've across the state, Farrington High School is another one, Health Academy, really helping students to get certified as medical assistants, and then they can get their national certification and then directly into industry and get employed. So thank you for your support of the opportunities for our students in our public schools, for allowing them the opportunity to excel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Should I try that word one more time? No, it's okay. Let's move on.
Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Representative Hashimoto.
Superintendent, I guess, can you explain, because it looks like this is the gov tax bill, so I assume it's a request to the DOE, this bill?
Yes.
So can you explain to us, what are the limits at this point without this bill that you're able to do right now, and what is this expanding you to be able to do?
So this bill would allow our students the opportunity to engage in commercial enterprise and really provide them an opportunity to experience what it's like to engage in real world profit-making type of opportunities for students.
I guess when I was in school, they had a school store and they used to charge for things. So without this bill, is this bill allowing them to legally do that? Because that was happening back then.
Yes, and
10 years, 15 years ago.
Thank you, Representative, for the question. It allows us to do that and also to expand beyond that into engaging with industry partners, developing those partnerships that I kind of shared, real world opportunities through engaging our students in processes such as design thinking, really enabling them to leverage their innovative skills in working together with partners and other students to create product that and merchandise and equipment that they can design, sometimes using the engineering design process to create real world equipment or artifacts that can be used in industry. So
I get that. But so what's the baseline right now? Though? What is your limit of what you can do? I'm just curious. Without
the bill.
Right.
I believe without the bill, we ask Ushijima or you can jump in. But I believe without the bill, we're not able to expand and to provide students with those resources that we could provide back into their program.
So you mean you can't do like so for example, like if you did video production services, can you do that? And then whatever profits you can then invest that back into the program. Can you do that now, or do you need this bill?
I believe we need the bill, but Choi Suyoka, I'll ask Mr. Suyoka.
Yeah, so this bill also, I am Troy Suyoka. I'm one of the educational specialists for the department. Thank you. This bill also allows us to take some of the profits gained and even allows them to pay students for the work that they're doing, and also giving them credit at the same time.
All right, but wait, I guess the question is can you do those operations already? Or
No. Yeah, no.
Okay, so this is like an important bill.
Yeah, so this kind of expands on what we currently have. Yeah,
okay.
And it gives employers an easier time to work with the department than before.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Okay, I really appreciate this bill and I understand that you want to make it easier, but numbers matter. So when you say that you're making student interns, employees of the state pursuant to Chapter 662, that happens to deal with the State Tort Liability Act. So now are you saying and suggesting that we need to have students covered by tort liability, and then when I see the numbers like 78, 76, 89, 103, 103D, that's like procurement. These are all large issues. So while I hear the importance of it, but this connects to the previous question, you can do all of these things without getting these broad kinds of expansions, which I don't know that we understand what the consequences are.
So Majority Leader is speaking to the next bill, but please keep that in mind. They're very similar in title and actually.
Yeah, and I'm
content.
looking at these in tandem. So
Yes,
I guess maybe to speak to all of that, because I don't. Yes. If anyone wants, sorry, Chair, thank you.
So hold on.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. Does this bill have to work in tandem with the next bill? And how does it work in tandem?
So it's going back to, so that the next bill, I guess, that you're going to be discussing, deals with the liability and things like that you're talking about. But this one, deals with the whole process on being able to allow students to get credit and to pay them, and then having, like I said, an easier time working with our industry partners. And in tandem, all these things were identified by schools as barriers on, when a lot of times they have businesses that want to work with schools, but things like this come up as barriers, and it might take a school a long time to try to figure these things out, and by then the opportunity maybe is lost because a business might not want to wait a year or two to try to get through all of this red tape to try to work with the business. And then the students, they have moved on also.
Vice Chair.
I'm not sure if you can speak to the Ka'u Dream Project. When I look at this bill, the school that comes to mind is Ka'u High School, who has worked not just with the University of Hawaii to get students college credit, but has also worked with KTA Superstores to ensure that the projects that these students make or create aren't just sold on campus in a small school store. They're sold across the island in basically a superstore chain. It's encouraged students to also become, to have interest in farm and agriculture, which we know we need to grow a new generation of farmers, but it's also given them the entrepreneurial skills. And I know that they faced many, many barriers in order to create something like that, and basically had to create a charter school within a public school. And that puts so much stress on the teacher, who is one of the educators being celebrated for Education Week. Can you speak to how this bill would allow opportunities like that in rural communities to be expanded?
Yeah, definitely. Especially in our rural communities where it's very small and they don't have the resources or the ability or the amount of teachers to try to do the research and really expand, their idea on what they want to do for the partnerships that businesses approach them with, or if they go out and try to form these partnerships to really bring these experiences to our students. And this bill would, like you said, would get move things a lot quicker. The bill is really, the opportunity is really for the students to learn and get the hands-on experience, not really for the school to make a large sum of money or anything like that. But the funds that do come in, it allows them to self-sustain the program at the school, and so they don't have to rely on state funds, to keep it going. I think that's the whole idea, where it can be self-sustaining.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I might add to Mrs. Suyoka's sharing. In addition, thank you, Vice Chair, for bringing up the Ka'u Dream, and it is definitely an incredible opportunity for students there. The students do work with KTA, and I think in addition to the opportunities that it provides for our students, as these students are successful and they come back to the school and they share their successes with other students and other community members, I think that pride in what students are doing then permeates beyond the walls of the school into the community. And so we're really looking at opportunities to not just to change students, but to really impact our families and our communities. So definitely a very important bill.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. During COVID, that school and their aquaponics program, which was set up through the so through the University of Hawaii, fed the community, the entire community, which was incredible, and they continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Members, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, moving on to the next bill, we have SB 3092 SD1 regarding commercial enterprise and students. First up on our list, we have Superintendent Hayashi providing testimony in support.
Keith Hayashi, Department of Education. We stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have testimony from Makihu Au Mai Native Farm, the administrator providing testimony in support. That's all I have on my list. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony on this bill? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? Vice Chair?
For the DOE? Like, I don't know which one of you. Thank you, Superintendent. It's to my knowledge that recently you folks proposed, you sent your plan to the Board of Education. And the board rejected the plan, saying that there wasn't enough detail. Can you expand a little bit more on some of the details that would be entailed within this?
I believe we're on SB 3092, Vice Chair.
Okay, my apologies. I'll wait.
Okay.
Members, any questions for SB 3092 SD1?
So can I
Majority
follow
Leader.
more specifically on my question? Why do we need all of this additional language? With the procurement chapters and chapter 662.
Thank you for the question. Similar to the previous measure that we're connecting, this bill would enable greater participation in commercial enterprises that do provide real world experiences for our students, that generated revenue that students are able to learn from and to grow within their schools, enable the sustainability of commercial enterprises. The restrictions on students as interns in schools poses challenges when implementing those commercial enterprises. And so SB 3092 SD1 removes those restrictions by deeming students to be employees of the state, thereby enabling more schools to offer students opportunities to participate in commercial enterprises, as Mr. Sueko had shared. Exemptions from procurement are currently being sought to help with the ease of creating commercial enterprises that will still need to tie to our educational purposes. So providing those students, deeming students employees of the state does provide greater flexibility and ease in helping our students to attain these goals.
Are there commercial entities that the DOE is partnering with that's asking for these kinds of statutory?
No, none that I know. I believe the ask is coming from our schools.
Okay. And I don't quite understand the procurement. I mean, I just, if it's revenues accrued by commercial activity in the schools, then why does there need to be an exemption for procurement? Because, can you explain that? I guess it's not, I'm not seeing why we need this to do the things that you're already currently doing. So what, if you can be specific about what the obstacles are that you're trying to overcome. I hear generalities, I don't hear the specific obstacles you're trying to overcome.
So specifically when you're running a business, it's very different when you're buying or purchasing services or goods when you're from the department. So a lot of times if, let's say it's a culinary class, they might need to purchase things pretty quickly right away, to fulfill a order or something that might come in, or equipment, or say something breaks down, they can't operate, without that. So yeah, in a normal business, they would just go out and buy it. But within the department, we have to follow the whole procurement code, get, and get quotes and everything. If they were to replace a stove or something like that, that is needed to run the enterprise. So, those specific examples are coming up from the schools, and, they're asking, how can we be competitive and how can we provide for our community if we have to go through these steps to purchase and, things like that. Same thing with something services and things like that.
Okay, so this is specifically related to commercial enterprises in schools where students are involved. I'm looking at Randy and I'm not thinking of commercial enterprises like a commercial kitchen. So does this language then expand so that you could hire personnel within commercial enterprises that don't involve students, and then you're going to avoid personnel, procurement, hiring practices? No, so
No,
this
is
is meant
for,
to be contained.
this is only, for students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for helping to clear up.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Members, any other questions? Quick question. So per your testimony, it's not necessarily the designation of the student as an employee. It's the designation as a student, as an employee in relation to these provisions, this flexibility within the statute.
Yes, it's specific to students, Chair. I'm sorry, the question was whether it's specific to students?
Yeah, it's because the bill's not very straightforward. You have to really reference, and like Majority Leader was saying, reference what particular statutes these are, and they all do deal with different exemptions or processes within our code. And so you're saying that you need both the designation, calling the student an employee in relation to these statutory provisions.
Provisions, yes.
Exemptions.
Yes.
That's what you need. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Moving on to the next bill, we have SB 3094 SD2. This is a EA for virtual school. First on our list, we have DOE in support.
Keith Hayashi, Department of Education. We stand in support, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We have Budget and Finance providing comments. HSTA in support.
Laverne Moore, speaking on behalf of Osa Tui, President of the Hawaii State Teachers Association. We're providing comments for this bill. And the main part of our concern is we want to ensure that any virtual school that is built, funded, or supported by the legislature is also required to only be able to hire Hawaii Teachers Standard Board licensed teachers who also reside in our state of Hawaii. With that being the case, we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have HTEA providing testimony and support. That's all I have on my list. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? Vice Chair.
My question still stands from before about the virtual school. I know that this did come before the BOE, and I was just wondering if you could provide a little bit more detail about what the virtual school will look like.
Thank you for the question, Vice Chair. Yes, currently we are looking at a site to house a virtual school, and looking at having that virtual school provide services for students across the state to support, in addition to what the program that OSID has stood up at their site, what's currently happening.
Do you have an estimate on how many students the school will serve? Because that was one of the issues that came up when students wanted to do online learning through COVID.
So for this past school year, we did accommodate all the requests that came to our office, and we had about over 600 requests, and we ended up, after things settled, to have more around 500, 550-ish students, and some have been returning back to their home-based schools, which is a great thing also. And really, I think the intention of the virtual school is we've learned a lot from the COVID pandemic. And while we know that in-person learning is so valuable, and for the majority of our students, that daily interaction with their peers, proximity to their teachers, just being on campus and having that school, spirit and pride and activities is really important. And at the same time, we also have learned that there are we have different types of learners, right? And we do have some students who do thrive in a distance or virtual type of setting. And so as we've learned lessons and look forward in terms of how we can continue to expand opportunities for students, it's really about offering something not just in response to the pandemic, but really in response to how students learn, opportunities, flexibility that students may be able to have if they have this virtual type of learning. We have some of those, hopeful Olympic students who may need to train, for several hours during a day. So, a different modality could help students who might have those types of aspirations as well. So,
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Hashimoto.
So what are your best guess projections of how many students you think will enroll in a continual virtual school? Because I'm pretty sure you probably have some pretty good numbers right now as you're all returning, right?
So for this upcoming school year, we're projecting to provide 774 seats across our 15 complex areas. And that's kind of a starting point. It's really hard to tell. Depends right now. we're not totally out of the pandemic and we don't know exactly what might happen. There may still be a need for parents who select this type of learning because of the health, I guess, worries. And currently, when we polled the parents in our program, we had about a half respond to the poll, but the majority of those parents selected this option because of COVID. It was a safety concern. So moving forward, K to 12, we think a good starting point might be around that 700-ish. And each year as we start off and build the program into a permanent type of learning that students can opt into if it's appropriate for them, we'll see how, I guess, the numbers grow from there.
So what is your initial estimation of how you're gonna do the funding? Are you gonna take their weight from a school and this will fund the virtual school, or is this going to be, you anticipate that that won't be enough to fund the virtual school? Like what's the funding strategy there? Are you just, I'm assuming you're using mostly federal funds for now, and then you need this appropriation to continue going, right?
Yes, in the long term, we will need a funding source. Right now, we are looking at our federal funds for the upcoming year. But we know that after, it's going to run out really fast if we do not have a dedicated stream of funding. So I'm not sure if I answered your question.
So I guess did you do any study to understand what is the deficit? So if you take somebody's weight, take it to that school, you estimate there's 700 students at that school.
Yes.
How much more do you need from there?
Our initial estimate with CFO Hallett's help was, I think, about 7,000 per student. That's the estimated amount that we came up with this year based on the costs that we had, the personnel. And this is, without purchasing dedicated equipment. We've used equipment from the school. So our program is really in close partnership with the schools who have referred students to us.
So organizationally, where is this being placed? And is it going to be placed, like you have the community school for adults that's under McKinley, like where would you think this is going to be ultimately housed?
Virtual school, I think those are some of the discussions we are thinking about. I don't think it's been determined yet. Currently, it is really a cross-office endeavor when we do this, and also in partnership with the complex areas. Although OSID had to take the lead when we stood up the the distance learning programs, we had to work very closely with our OTM office, our OITS, who, trying to figure out what do we do about the student information system. And right now there's a lot of extra steps that have to take place because OSID is a program and we still have to rely on the schools to do certain things like assign a ACCN course number to each student. We can't directly do it just because, we're not a separate entity, we're a program. So there's many details like that we have had to problem solve. So it's been quite a learning experience.
So, yeah, a lot to figure out, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think, if you're clear with us how much you need, that would be good to know. But I think looking forward, I just worry you're gonna have to stay competitive, right? They're gonna have to give people a reason why you want to do virtual and how you compare to other things. And my thing is like probably this has a lot of potential in my mind because if there's a class that's not available, especially in rural areas, maybe virtual is an option for a portion, right? And maybe that will prop up enrollment, but you're gonna have to figure out how do you pay, right? How do you balance your book? So
yeah,
I think it's very interesting in new territory.
And I think we currently do that with our program to offer our remote schools with options. The students can take up to 2 different courses, and that's for that very intention. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Go ahead.
I'm not sure who from the Department of Ed could answer this, but I understand Thank you, Superintendent Hayashi. And I met with you before and, we were in agreement and I'm grateful that you were in agreement on the importance of having person-to-person, face-to-face learning, which I've always been an advocate for. So with this bill, I guess my question is at what point, well, the bill says, and we've heard comments today on how there's a need for this. I'm trying to understand where and at what point do we decide that with how COVID is evolving and we've learned to hopefully cope with it and live with it. At what point would this be necessary? I mean, my background with teaching, and as a parent, I've strongly advocated for the kids to be in person. So in my recollection of teaching in the classroom, it would take a special circumstance to deem a child. There's a number of children that would require or this type of learning virtually would be more important or more fruitful or beneficial to the student to do it virtually versus in person. I understand we talked about rural areas, but I think my question is at what point is this going to be deemed not necessary where we won't have enough special circumstances where the person-to-person should be what we should be focusing on versus virtual learning? Thank
you for the question. As A.S. Ushijima shared, I think the virtual school provides another option for students to learn. I believe as we move forward and as we continue to develop the program and we identify other areas that we can expand on, that it would be a option, a permanent option for students to be able to choose from. As we look, I think, at other states and some of the things that they're doing, some virtual schools have a large number of students. And I think as we continue to build out and develop our program that we're doing, definitely we'll be expanding into other areas that in collaboration with other states and other jurisdictions. So I really believe that the virtual option is something that's here to stay. Definitely the focus on in-person learning. This does, however, provide another option for students and families. And as A.S. Ushijima shared, helps to address various modalities in helping students to connect and reconnect to their learning.
So would this be per school, you have like one person virtually or like statewide, we have a hub where they're teaching statewide students who are virtual, or every school in every district is going to be required to be equipped with this type of virtual education?
Thank you for the question. Currently, A.S. Ushijima and OSED does have a virtual option for students. We do also have complex areas that have developed programs. I think one that everyone knows is Pineapple Academy and the Lelehua Wailua Mililani complex area, which does a great job. The virtual option that we're having is not to say that everyone must move to this program, because if complex areas have something that is addressing student need and providing those opportunities, most definitely want to learn from them and connect and continue to build those programs, but also to provide a support and an option for families statewide that will be able to leverage and access the program in terms of equity of access to.
Okay, one more final question. Thank you. And I appreciate you guys and all you guys are doing. I can only imagine. I have teacher friends. I know it's been a struggle the last 2 years to teach everybody and accommodate everybody. But do you have numbers on the numbers of students that are IDEA versus not, the special ed versus the not special ed, who are doing virtual? I should have asked you this on the side note, but if you could get that to me, I would like to know if you have stats for that, because with the IEPs, a lot of them, they need in person. So I was interested in knowing how many of them are IDEA that are doing virtual versus not.
Do we have, if not, we can get that to represent.
Okay.
Thank you for that question. So I can speak for our state program this year. We have, I think, approximately 40 students out of about 550-ish. And we work in partnership with the home-based school. The home-based school still does the IEP and, sets up the meetings with the parents. And our teacher, of course, attends. And, we follow what's in that IEP plan for that student. And really, like any IEP team for any student, that we provide special services for. They talk about what is an appropriate educational setting for that student. So these are students that the IEP team have, discussed and determined that, yes, this is a viable option for this student. So, our program is not limited.
Okay, maybe I can, on the side, I'd like to see how those students are faring. The IDEA students are faring virtually versus in person, but I can talk to you on the side about that, yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? So just to accent, this program is going to leverage in-state licensed teachers to offer the instruction.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
that is the current plan, right?
Okay. Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on to the next bill, SB 3095 SD1. This is a EA for a base yard. DOE. Yes, Tanaka.
Hello, chairs, vice chairs. Randy Tanaka, Department of Education. We stand by our written testimony in support of this measure. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you for being here. That's all I have. Members, any questions? Seeing none, moving on. SB 3098 SD1 regarding emergency appropriation for lead abatement. Department of Education in support.
Hello again, Chair Woodson, vice chairs. Randy Tanaka, Department of Education. We stand on our written testimony in support of this measure. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you. Budget and Finance providing comments. Environmental Health Administration providing testimony in support. Department of Health.
Hi, Chair Woodson, members of the committee. My name is Diana Felton. I'm the state toxicologist for the Department of Health. And the Department of Health stands on its written testimony with one addition from news just this week. There has been some discussion about this bill as to if federal funding from the bilateral infrastructure law that's recently passed would be able to fill this need. However, unfortunately, a lot of the options that are now being made available through the federal funding streams are really aimed at replacing lead service lines, which through our 2021 Hawaii Wind Project, we have discovered are not really an essential problem here in Hawaii. Our identification of problems leading to lead contamination in the drinking water at the schools is really related to old fixtures and localized plumbing, not the lead service lines. So that does disqualify us from a lot of the options for the federal funding options that have become available through the bilateral infrastructure law and the recently passed federal budget. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. Thank you.
For sharing. Next, we have HSTA providing testimony and support.
Aloha, Laverne Moore speaking on behalf of Osotui Jr., President of HSTA. We support this bill and we would like to see this dealt with immediately. To make our schools safe for our students, teachers, and staff right away, the Hawaii Teachers Association urges you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's all we have on our testifiers list. Is there anyone else wishing to provide testimony? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? Chair, okay, go ahead.
To the Department of Health. Hey, good afternoon. Two elementary schools in District 30 are currently affected by the Red Hill water crisis. And to my knowledge, the students and the faculty there are not drinking that water. I'm not even sure if they're even using that water to wash their hands or do anything like that. Would this bill allow the Department of Health to replace some of the pipes that are most likely going to be necessary to be replaced in the next immediately, essentially? Or are we going to have to wait for the funding coming from the federal government directed towards Red Hill to do this kind of work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at this time, there's no indication for or clear plans to replace plumbing in elementary schools from the Red Hill related water contamination. So very different kind of contamination compared to lead. So that contamination came from, a distant point source, contaminated the water system, has now been flushed, and except for just 2 left elementary schools, which should be cleared within the next 2 days, all of those elementary schools and zones and homes have been flushed and tested and cleared for consumption. So there is no longer concern for contamination in the drinking water related to the Red Hill contamination at this time. That will continue to be monitored on a long-term monitoring plan with regular testing over the next 3 months and 2 years, specifically at the schools and also a portion of the homes. So that kind of contamination is a very different kind of contamination than the lead that we're talking about in this situation, which is actually coming from the fixtures and maybe some of the local plumbing.
Okay, 1 second. So is that specific, is that lead in the water from the fuel? Because I want to make sure that there's
no
nexus. Okay, so
no.
it's not
So
sufficient
very
nexus.
clearly no lead in the JP5 from Red Hill.
All right, thank you. Members, any other questions?
Sure.
Okay, Majority Leader, go ahead.
Is there someone from the DOH that can speak to the lead abatement plans? I mean, not DOH, DOE. Randy? So this has been an ongoing project for DOE to identify. Do we have a list of what schools are most affected? Is there any kind of triage list? What's the status of the plans on how we're
Yes.
going to do lead abatement and quickly? Because no lead is good for kids.
Correct. There is no safe level of lead for kids 6 years and under. So how this got started, there was a study some years ago, but recently through the water infrastructure improvement work that the DOE does, they went out and sampled a number of elementary schools, of which 106 we found that have a level of contamination. The EPA lead and copper rule level for public water systems is 15 parts per billion. States have lowered it to 5 parts per billion, but Hawaii has maintained the federal EPA standard. So we've identified these schools, we've identified the fixtures, and we've locked out those fixtures. What this funding will do is allow us to go in and replace the fixtures and do some retesting. We have about another 73 elementary schools to be tested in 2022. So we have begun that, we've identified, we've locked out, we'll get funding, we'll start repairing those, and the second half of the elementary schools, the 73 will be tested, and we will proceed.
Do you have a list of the schools? Is there a report? And I apologize if I have not seen it.
No, it's on the Department of Health website. And so it's all listed there, it's public information.
And you do have like a triage, so you guys are targeting the most
Yes.
critical schools or?
Some schools, it's just one fixture. Some other schools are 3 or 4, but we've got them prioritized. We'd like to hit them all as fast as we can.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Chair.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Members, any other questions? Quick question for DOE. First, maybe CFO Hallett. Do we have a cost estimate as to how much this is going to cost? And per the toxicologist's concerns about us not being able to use the Build Back Better funds that was passed recently in Congress. Is this going to be state funds used to address this issue?
I better defer to AS Tanaka on that. Build Back Better, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that either.
We have estimated about $1,700 per fixture, parts and labor. And you should know it's all types of fixtures. It's faucets, drinking fountains, kitchen pot fillers. So we will go back in and start replacing those. As far as federal funding, I'm not sure, Chair Woodson. Well, I'll go back and we'll see if there are federal funds available for it.
Okay, thank you. So for CFO Hallett, so this is not, we are not using or trying to attempt to aggregate federal funds from the bipartisan infrastructure bill that just passed Congress a couple months ago. This will all be state funds.
Yeah, that's what we are seeking for this measure, yes.
Is there any conversations with the federal government, the USED, with regards to if they can amend their guidance or there a language so we can capture some of those funds?
That's something we can take back. and look into.
Yes, Samantha, go ahead.
We will work with the Department of Health on that as they can appeal to their federal partners. The one concern we have is timeliness, right? If we can get the funding, then we can start. If there's a rebate opportunity, we will reach out. But I think it's critical for students, parents, and policymakers to understand that we need to expedite this quickly. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Is it possible for us to go ahead and move forward with EA first and then get reimbursed on the back end? If in fact there's some alignment with how we can use those federal funds.
That's what we'll work on.
Okay.
If there's funding available, we will do our best effort to get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, quick recess. First reconvening for DM on several bills. First up, we have SB 2822 SD1, asthma education and the Department of Education. Members, we would like to pass this with the HD1, converting all the shalls to mays as throughout the proposal, defecting the date to July 1st, 2050. Questions, comments, concerns? Question for the vote, please.
Voting on SB 2822 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bellotti? Aye. Representative Clark, excused. Representative Costales? Aye. Representative Ganadin?
Aye.
Representative Gates?
Aye.
Representative Hashimoto?
Aye.
Representative Ono.
Aye.
Representative Quinlan. Excused. Representative Takayama.
Aye.
Representative Yamane. Excused. Representative Okimoto. Chair recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to the next bill, SB 2189, regarding Department of Education Board Chairperson position. Members that would like to pass this. Defecting the date to July 1st, 2050. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on SB 2189, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to SB 2824 SD1, Board of Education Qualifications, defective date July 1st, 2051. Questions, comments, concerns? Any questions, comments, concerns?
2824.
We're on 2824 SD1.
Voting on SB 2824 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to SB 2180 SD1, Board of Education nominees and confirmations. Would like to defect the defective date to July 1st, 2051. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2180 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to SB 3090 SD1, Federal Reimbursements. Members that would like to offer just technical and non-substantive changes, defecting the date to July 1st, 2050. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on SB 3090 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 3091 SD2. This is DOE career pathways and commercialization. Tech non-substantive changes and defective to the date to July 1st, 2050. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 3091 SD2, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 3092 SD1 DOE exemptions and DOE students. Would like to defect the date to July 1st, 2050. And technical non-substantive changes if needed. Take a look at the language, but I think we should be okay. Questions, comments, concerns?
Just a quick comment. I'm gonna go with reservations on this one, just because the inclusion of all those other chapters, which not just procurement, but has public involvement, public employee, public service laws, as well as employee cost and public contracts, raise some questions for me and just want further elaboration on why those are needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on SB 3092 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Noting the reservations of Representative Bellotti, are there any other reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. SB 3094 SD2 EA for virtual schools, technical non-substantive changes, defecting the date to July 1st, 2051. Defect date. Questions, comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 3094 SD2, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendment. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Reservations for Representative Okimoto. Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. SB 3095 SD1 EA for our new school face yard, defecting the date to July 1st, 2051. Comments, concerns? Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Voting on SB 3095 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Lastly, SB 3098 SD1 EA for lead abatement. Obviously, we're going to pass this. Pass as is the recommendation. Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 3098 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass as is. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members adjourned.